Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, welcome to the latest episode of the Future Proof Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Muller, and got a really exciting guest today, and we'll introduce Rob here in a second. For those of you just joining the podcast, just to know who we are, we specialize in SaaS growth and helping B2B companies scale their revenue. We've built our own AI-powered platform to solve this problem, which outperforms most other platforms by 2 to 5x, just because we layer in AI so our clients get more sales qualified conversations, right? That's what it's all about. So if you want to learn more and just take your business to the next level, just make sure you stick around, or if you're interested, just a one-on-one call, right? No sales pitch, it's not who we are. Just drop the word growth in the comments or DM us, and someone from our team will set that up. Let's get to today's episode and introduce Rob Marsh from the Copywriter Club. Rob, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I am really excited to be here.
Awesome. So Rob, as we always do on our podcast, let's start with the founder's journey. So talk to us about your background leading up to the Copywriter.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a really long story. I know we're trying to keep the episode down to 30 minutes, but I mean, I started as a copywriter back in 1992. That's how long I've been doing writing, marketing, that kind of stuff. And so, through those early years, I was working at agencies, working in-house, writing copy. I was part of a couple of startups, one that was acquired by Hewlett Packard at one point in time. After about 4 years there, I licensed some of the software that we built there and started my own business, SaaS business. It was a design where you could it was really the first design your own logo type business, and was doing that in 2014 or so. Left again to just write, because that's really what my strength is and what I love helping businesses do. And about 3 or 4 years later, I started this business, the Copywriter Club. And the Copywriter Club is focused on helping other content writers, copywriters, freelancers market themselves and help them start and grow their own businesses. Copywriters are really good at helping other people figure out what makes them different. Terrible at doing it for themselves. The shoemaker's children have no shoes kind of a problem. And so I help copywriters.
The painter that doesn't paint his own house, all of it, right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So I help them see what it is that they do and talk about it in a unique way so they can attract clients.
Awesome. And so you had a partner, right? But that changed now, and you're now kind of running everything. Tell me a little bit about, right, kind of the evolution of Copywriter Club, right? Because I know you started out in teaching them the business, but you've got more towards the product side. Talk to us about that evolution, and then we'll talk about the future.
Yeah. So when we started out, we knew that we wanted to turn it into a business of some kind, but we did not have a product. We didn't have an idea of exactly what we wanted to do. We literally launched with a podcast. And at the same time, we launched a free community on Facebook. And for 5 months, we were putting out 2 podcasts a week at that point in time. We're now just doing 1. But we had this community where we would talk about what the guests shared or the ideas, or we invited other copywriters to come in and start asking questions about their business. And so after about 5 months of looking at those conversations and what people were asking over and over again, we had the content for launching our first product, which was a sort of a content and coaching hybrid program where we, again, help copywriters launch and grow their own businesses. The first few years were pretty coaching heavy. We did have some training, workshops, that kind of stuff, but everything that we did was really around events and training in person. As you mentioned, my business partner decided she wanted to move on to other things last year. And so for the last few months, I have been working on sort of refiguring how we approach the market and doing more products where people are able to engage with the content that we have on their own timeline, but then layering in some group coaching or help as needed. So it's less coaching focused and more product focused. And so that's been a big challenge over the last year or so. We have so much content we built over the last 7 or 8 years, and making that useful for people today, there's just a ton of opportunity there.
Yeah. And so talk to us about like some of the products that you're.
Yeah, so I have a membership community where we put just about everything that we've ever done in there. And so there are workshops about how to grow your authority online. There are workshops about copywriting itself. There are workshops about doing research so that you're pulling out the things that people need to hear in order to buy. There are workshops about finding clients. So all of that stuff that's in our membership. We've priced that so that just about any copywriter can afford to be in there and get that help that they need. But also there are opportunities to go deeper on some subjects. And so we have a course that's, 7 parts about, how do you find clients? I have courses on how to build your authority that live outside of that membership community. And I use those courses hopefully to attract people into our world and then get them into our community so that they can go even deeper with us. Again, community is a really big focus of what we do.
And it makes sense because no matter where they're at in their journey, right, they can start with something, right, that anchors them.
Exactly.
And then start to understand how do I take my skills, wherever they may be, and build it into a business of some sort, right? Whether it's a freelance business or it's an agency business of some sort.
Yeah, exactly. Some people come in, they've never had a client before. And so their immediate need is, how do I find clients, right? So we can help them with that skill set. Or somebody who's just starting out, how do I create my own website? What are the things that I need to say about myself? How do I create a service? How do I price it in a way that attracts the right clients? So we'll teach them that. Or somebody who's maybe farther along in their journey, how do I build my authority online, right? And so we'll help with those kinds of things. And so the Copywriter Club is really focused on, how do we help somebody who has started their business or running their business take that next big step?
Yeah, makes sense. And so as you start to look at down the road, right, do you envision, before we even get into tech, right, and how that's shaping everything, especially in your world, tell me about like how you envision, because the way I think of it, Robin, tell me what you think, is that everything is more of horizontal models, right? To where the copywriter and the copy skills, however they fit, they're going to fit into somebody's ecosystem in a really nice way if it's done right. Where you used to have, you always had your internal, someone on your team. To me now, it's how do I find a really great resource, which to me, you pull from the Copywriter Club, and you embed that person in your team in a either a fractional model, or it depends on how much content, or a full-time model, however that works, but you're leveraging that. Do you see that the same way?
Oh yeah, I think this is one of the biggest opportunities for both businesses on the one side and copywriters or content creators on the other side. In the past, businesses would dip in and out. We need help with a couple of things here. So they'd hire a writer, and then maybe they, a few months later would hire another writer. And there's, a lot of time spent in training them on voice. And this is what we're looking for. And by the time they sort of figured it out, they were on to another project with another writer. And I think that we've seen a shift where smart businesses are looking at freelancers or contract workers almost as if they are employees. Now, obviously, they're not employees. There's all kinds of legal things that happen there, right? But treating them like a real member on the team, somebody who isn't just there to write the thing and make $1,
right? But jump in, jump out.
You're paying them to care about your business, right? And so, copywriters working today with that kind of a relationship, yes, they may be writing the weekly email, or they may be, helping with blog posts or other content creation needs that you have, but they're also hopefully looking at the business and saying, wait, we don't have an abandoned cart sequence. If I help create that, now I can add extra dollars into the business. Or we don't have a welcome sequence that's, as people drop out of using our SaaS product and churning out, I can make some improvements in the welcome sequence that increases usage rates by, say, 10 or 15%. What does that look like on the back end as far as numbers go? And so they become not a resource to be leaned on, but a partner that's really helping think through the business. And smart business owners are trying to develop those kinds of relationships with the copywriters that want them.
Absolutely. And to me, I've always subscribed to the saying that content is king. I don't care if you're doing SEO, organic, you're doing a SaaS model, right? You have to educate the market to your value prop, right? And this is why your community is so valuable, because if you find someone that is good and understands those metrics, right? Depending on which industry it is. The impact on the business, especially to the founder or CEO or the exec that is hiring that, or the CMO, the impact and the measurable uptick is huge. Do you help coach your students on, and I don't want to call them students because they're just part of your community, right? Some of them are, but some of them are just really, your clients as well.
Yep.
But do you help them understand it and communicate that impact? Because one of the things you just mentioned, right? I'll give you a great example. So we had a SaaS product. Adding the back end was massive, right? And that communication and that stickiness factor, right? That uptick was well over 20%. And when we didn't have hardly anything. So do you help coach them through that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we can. So, our community is really, really broad. We have, people who are only focused on writing blog posts, that kind of thing. That copywriter is probably not right for that sort of assignment that you're talking about, where it's like, help us build the back end of our systems, whether it's adding, new features or, helping people learn to use different products, along the line. But we do have a good group of copywriters who think about back end products, lifetime value, how quickly we can go from spend to profitability, like those kinds of things. And we do have those. And because of the way that we run our community, I'm there, yes, to offer coaching and help to anybody who's there and asks for orders like, hey, what do you think about these kinds of ideas? Or how can I help this client grow? We're there to give them that support.
Yeah. Another example is we have an e-com brand, right? And, adding all the different sequences, the abandoned cart, the cross-sell education about the other products in the product line. That none of that was there. The massive uptick on the cart value alone is huge. And so for everybody in the e-commerce world that doesn't know this, you should, right? That's where you need somebody from Rob's community, because you bring someone in there and you add that value, and it changes the business metrics. And so to me, that's where that whole horizontal model is coming into play, because you're hiring expertise. They're not just bringing that content creation, right? Or sequence writing or blog posting. They're also bringing in, now you can tie it to analytics and see the uptick.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about AI here in a minute, but one of the things that copywriters are doing in order to make sure that they're contributing and they're not being replaced by AI is this higher level strategic thinking. And so, especially with a startup SaaS company, where the marketing director is literally doing everything they can, they're handling sales calls in a lot of cases to see what's going right or what's wrong. How do we qualify our leads, and how do we figure out, all of the moving pieces in the product on the website, right? It's so helpful to have somebody else who can come in and say, like you said, we're missing this sequence, or we could do some cross-selling. The number of businesses that I admire that don't send out a weekly email to just keep me to keep their name sort of at the top of mind, it absolutely boggles my mind. And I know a lot of people sort of resist, well, I don't want to be in the inbox too much, or I don't want to be selling too hard. The fact of the matter is, if you're not in the inbox regularly selling, you are losing an opportunity. And I know we weren't necessarily planning on talking about this, but that approach to email where we treat people's inboxes like, I am a visitor and I'm going to be really quiet here and I'm only going to answer your questions when you ask. People sign up for our lists. They are asking for our help as businesses.
Right.
So we owe it to them to tell them how our products can help them. And if we have other products that can serve other needs, right? And you can't do that if you're not showing up in their world in some way on a very regular basis. In my opinion, at least weekly, could be even daily. And I know a lot of businesses that are shifting to a daily program simply because it works.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more, right? I mean, if you have value, why are you hiding it, right?
Exactly.
To me, it's crazy, because there's so much junk out there. But if you know you have value that will help someone, you need to be in every possible way, which segues really nicely into where I wanted to go, right? What do we even say about how AI is disrupting things, right? And how you're teaching and coaching your clients and students how to embrace that. Let's talk about the number of channels, right? And the number of communication mechanisms and how that's impacting, right? Because, one of the things we've built is a content syndication engine, right? And for that reason, it is so difficult to be in all these places. And having all this content. So how are you coaching people to, to help with that?
For most of the writers that I talk to, we encourage them to start in one place because I mean, you're sort of putting your finger on the problem. When you try to be everywhere and you have limited resources, you end up being nowhere. You end up, starts and stops and a little bit here and no consistency anywhere. And so for most of the clients that I work with, I say, pick a place. Find the place where your clients are. So if a copywriter is writing for SaaS companies, they should show up where SaaS founders are hanging out. And that's maybe not even online, right? Like it may be at a MarTech conference,
Right.
in their area. It may be somewhere else. So if they're there, now you need to be figuring out, okay, how do I get on their radar at the event? Is there a tag that people are using on Twitter? Is the event talking about itself somewhere where I can insert myself into the conversation, whether it's through comments on LinkedIn? Can I get a spot on the stage where I can speak about how I can serve these clients, right? You need to be thinking about things outside of this window of, well, if I'm dancing on TikTok, I'm talking to my clients. And that's just not the reality for most people. Beyond that, though, once you have that channel where you're connecting with clients, where you're showing up, using tools that can help you, go from LinkedIn and syndicate that content over to, say, Threads and Twitter and Instagram or wherever can be incredibly helpful. But you don't want to do that at the expense of that one place, that place where your clients or your best customers are starting out.
Totally agree. That is tremendous advice, right? Start where they live and expand from there. Yeah. So now let's get into emerging tech, AI specifically, right? Because nowhere more than the marketing organization is impacted by AI. And in some ways, in a really good way, in the fact that it becomes, as we call it here, digital companion or co-pilot. It takes a good copywriter and makes them great because they can be that much more productive. How do you see it? And what are you seeing?
Yeah, I see it a lot of the same. AI is definitely having an impact in the creative world. We're talking the week after ChatGPT just launched their crazy good image generation new engine that, in fact, I think they switched it off because so many people were using it. At least they started to throttle the use on it. But we have seen over the last 2 years that AI is becoming more and more capable at writing for advertising, for marketing purposes. Is it 100% there? No. In many cases, and if you really care about your brand voice, it's probably not there yet. But there's a lot of that basic need for content that was going to content farms, low cost $10 articles. All of that stuff has been eaten up by AI. Those opportunities are gone and probably gone forever. And that's definitely had an impact on copywriters, content writers, because a lot of people they learn the trade by doing those low ticket kinds of,
and then walk up the value ladder,
right? and then they move up the value chain. It'll be really interesting to see what happens in the next 5 to 10 years, because without humans learning those skills at that lower level, as copywriters move on, pass on, die, retire, whatever, it'll be interesting to see how we train copywriters to replace them at the mid and higher levels that AI doesn't yet get to. Having said all of that, though, AI is a great skill enhancer in that it takes somebody who is pretty good and can make them great, or somebody who was decent can make them pretty good, right? It's raising all of the skill sets. Those copywriters who understand persuasion, influence, how to get clicks, how to get conversions, are using AI to improve their skills and help their clients get more of that stuff. And so having somebody who understands that and can use AI basically to supercharge those efforts is starting to see a lot of benefit from these kinds of tools.
Totally agree. And so tell me how you're teaching, right, your Copywriter Club clients to use AI, because one of the things that people underestimate is the ability to really get the output from it that you put into it. So it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So basic things, basic prompts get you run-of-the-mill stuff.
Correct.
When you learn how to really become a prompt engineer and ask it the right things to write it the right way, like you're talking about brand voice, tone, the type of, whether it's humorous or not, right? It's not just, hey, fill in the blanks of this template. There's a lot of nuance to it. How deep are you seeing that? And what are you coaching?
Yeah. I mean, 2 years ago, you could type in, write me an email in, conversational voice, and you would get back, something, be like, oh, that's, it's good, but it was never,
right?
It was never great, right? And the way that I teach copywriters to do it is we use some really in-depth inputs when we're asking ChatGPT, Claude, or any of the other tools out there to do the work for us. So one of the products that we have is a course that we call Research Mastery. And basically that course helps writers or anyone else dig into who is my customer. And it's about a 4 or 5 page form where we're asking them questions about their psychographics, their problems, what keeps them up at night. They go really deep on that. We also have another forum where we're talking about the product features, the benefits, the advantages that it gives, the transformation that the product can create for a user. And that is another forum that's about 3 or 4 pages deep. We have another forum where we talk about competitors, because we want to see what the competitive environment is and to know what other people are saying about their products. How do we stack up? How do we compare to all of that? And then we also go deep on the expert or the brand behind the product. What is it that they bring to the table? If it's someone like you, Brent, what is your experience? What have you built? What, are you working on? Or if it's a brand, let's say like Tesla, right? Like, what do they bring to the table?
Yeah. What's their unique UCP or absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm basically, once all of that's compiled, we're talking about like 15 pages of data. That's what I give to a chat engine in order to say, okay, now let's start talking about, I need to create a sales page for this product. You've got all the information about the product. You've got all the information about the user. And we start to make those connections. And the thing that GPTs are so good at is connecting data and finding where the intersections are. So
the concentric circles, right? The overlap, right?
Exactly.
But if you don't give them enough circles, right, you're not going to get the bullseye.
That's the point. Yeah. So if you give them, if you're giving them just bits and pieces here, you're going to get garbage out. Like you said, garbage in, garbage out. But when you give this really in-depth data, then what comes out of it, it's 85% of the way that I would use it as a professional copywriter who's been doing this for 30 years, right? I can look at it and say, okay, I can make a few tweaks here, or I can change the story, or I can, improve the offer in this little way. But 85% of the work there is done. And so something that might have taken me 2 weeks to research and write, I can now do in a day or maybe even less.
That right there is what people should get excited about. They should want to continue to hire copywriters, but they could get the output so much faster and they cut their timelines down.
Exactly.
Right? But not learning what you just talked about and doing it off to they're not going to get nearly the quality, right, that you just talked about.
That's exactly right. If you're just, again, asking the machine to give you output, it will give you whatever it thinks is right. But if you can give it that in-depth information about all of this stuff, and that's where working with a skilled copywriter helps businesses still. It's less about the hours, honestly. I mean, it's great that you can turn it around faster, but right. I mean, if doing something in 8 hours still provides you with a garbage outcome, you're much better. You're much better spending the 2 weeks, right? On the other hand, and so what you're really looking for isn't the time being invested here. It's the skill level of the person operating the AI. And good copywriters, and this is what we're teaching. This is why good copywriters are engaging with AI. They're learning to use the tools so that when clients come along and say, hey, this is the kind of help I need, now we can help them use the tools in order to get the outputs that help customers buy and increase sales and move businesses forward.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to hit home, right, about, and your group is kind of a beacon for this. Most people on the creator side in general, right, of marketing, have the creative part of their brain working, right? And one of the things that if you do a lot of research on AI, and this is kind of where people get hung up in the wrong way, in my opinion, right? Especially bigger companies, is that they think AI is another IT function. And it is not. And if you think about, there's experts out there, but I know Mark Cuban put out one of my favorite quotes was, he said, from the years, I think it's 2022 or 2024 on, the most sought after people will be liberal arts degree majors because of the way that they think and that they can do what you just talked about with AI to get better outputs. So it's not about programming it. It's about thinking through what are all the inputs I can give it to get the best output out. And to me, if people are listening to this podcast, take nothing out, what Rob and I just talked about is one of the most important things about how to use AI the right way. And it's how you get the best output. And it's not 100%, but man, if it gets you 85, 90% of the way there, and then you have a great copywriter that just produced that and knows how to make the tweaks, your quality is going through the roof.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you and I are singing from the same hymnal here.
Yeah.
It is such a powerful tool when used right. It's a pretty powerful tool when used wrong, but a smart marketer is going to know, in comparing, say, decent output versus great output, one is going to convert at, say, 2%. The other one's going to convert at, say, 5%. And the difference is 150% growth in your business, right? Between 2 and 5%. And so you want to be working with the people who can help you go from 2% to 5%, whether that's somebody internal, whether that's somebody external. And in order to get there, people have to be using these tools to play around with, to experiment with. You just got to be, it's time. If you've been ignoring them before now, you can't afford that anymore.
Right. And that's been my message, right? That's the whole point of my podcast is whoever you're working with, if they're not AI first, right, you're making a massive mistake because you can't afford not to embrace this.
Exactly.
So, Rob, talk to me about some of the things that you use AI personally, all right, as a founder that other founders might find interesting.
So a couple of things that I've been doing. I love custom GPTs. Taking an hour or two, up front to set up something that, I have a process for that I will use over and over. It has been really, really helpful. So just as an example, one of the things that copywriters need to do in order to find great ideas is you've got to write a lot of headlines, a lot of bullets, a lot of subheads. The more that you write, the better the chances are you're going to come across one that's pretty good. And, taking all of those inputs that I was talking about earlier, once you sort of get that into your brain and start writing it out, you can spend a day or two, looking for hooks and angles and different ways of thinking about it. Well, I created a custom GPT based off of 21 different kinds of headlines. I gave it about 4 or 5 examples of each one. And now all I have to do is log in to my custom GPT. I click the button that says, give me 100 headlines, and it will say, okay, tell me who the client is, tell me what the product is. And I can upload those documents that I was talking about. And literally, again, within 45 seconds, I have 100 headlines. And of those 100, I know probably 25 to 30% of them are usable without a change, right? They're that good. And maybe another 20%, if I rewrite 1 or 2 words, they're also that good. So it's increased my speed for that kind of a thing. I've got another one that I developed that basically takes a product feature and will game out what are the advantages of this feature for a particular customer, what are the benefits, and then how does it contextualize those benefits into a user's life. So it's one thing to say, hey, here, this is the benefit. And it's quite another to say that, and that means that you get to, do this great thing in your life. You have this transformation of this result. And so that GPT can figure that stuff out, again, in a couple of seconds. And I've built 3 or 4 of these. I've built some others that I use internally for, say, taking a workshop and turning it into a 4 or 5 page playbook. So I can just easily see what the ideas in the workshop are. I don't have to watch the 60-minute workshop anymore in order to, these are the 6 things that I want to do. So some amazing things that I can do just with these custom GPTs.
Yeah, that is amazing. That is a really cool thing. And are you just building them right inside OpenAI?
Yeah. Currently, I've been doing that. I've started to experiment with some of the agentic apps as well. They go a little bit deeper. So, the next step will be not just taking a workshop and, creating a playbook or, pulling other things out of it, but say setting up an agent that once I've recorded a workshop in Zoom, it's going to pull the workshop, it's going to write the transcript, and then, create the playbook and post it into my membership, all without me having to touch it. That's the next level. That's what I'm working on.
That is really cool, right? Yeah, I get that.
The agentic tools for this are still a little kludgy. They're not quite as good as they need to be, but we're not more than a few months off of these things being able to do it. And obviously there's some risks with some of the stuff. If you're starting to tell the agent to do the thinking for you, it's going to go wrong and you're going to have to fix it at some point. But for some very structured needs and business cases, that's the next step in my business.
Yeah. And you can put like approval steps in there if you need to, right? Yeah. So yeah, hey, let me check it at this. Okay, move to the next. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But it still goes really fast and does a lot. Again, I'm a big believer that if you can get 80% there, how much time does that save you, right? It doesn't have to be 100%.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a programmer working on a SaaS product right now and you're spending 12 hours of your day working on that, and you can save 80% of that means, you're working 3 hours a day, and now you can go to the gym, you can go to the movies with your spouse,
right?
You can hang out with your kids, it frees up all kinds of opportunity.
Absolutely, right? It can get you better work-life balance, but it also, can clear you for some great thinking time, right? Why
Exactly.
because a lot of times we get bogged down by the mundane, repetitive, menial tasks. And we're always like, if we could get that off our plate, well, here's a chance to get it off your plate, and it frees up your thinking space. And now you can, probably break through in some areas that you just wouldn't have had time.
Exactly. Yeah. These are great tools. And again, I encourage everybody to just play around with them. Even if you don't have a business need for them yet, start playing around with them, because it'll occur to you how you can use them to free up time, free up thinking. They're also really good for creativity. I mean, it's one of the things that I haven't built into a custom GPT, but I will still use Claude for, is I'll just say, hey, I'm thinking about this thing. Ask me some questions about it. Help me think about this deeper. I have an idea for a book. What kinds of things should I be adding into this book? Right. There's that creative back and forth, that brainstorming ability, or the ability for a GPT to reflect back to you some of the things that you ought to be thinking, or that can challenge your thinking, is really, really powerful.
Yeah. And I would encourage every founder and CEO, and we're going to be sending it out. I was supposed to get it out on Friday, so I'm a little late, but in our newsletter is, as Kim Mahan, who I have to give her credit, she took a prompt that I had already built and made it way better. And so I'm going to send that way better one that she revealed on her podcast, but she calls it the prompt that changed her life. But I'm telling you, I've been using it for the better part of 3 weeks. It's unbelievable. And because it's one of those ones you just talked about, Rob. It challenges you. It is not hey, I'm going to be, all pie in the sky and, whatever you tell me is right. It's, hey, what, like she put in, I was thinking about writing a book, right? And she's like, and ChatGPT, or actually I think she used Grok, it was Grok, the sarcastic mode, but it was basically, hey, why are you writing the book? Are you writing the book for, for your ego? Or are you writing the book to help grow your business, or you're writing the book to help others? And then when you answer that, then it starts challenging you. Or, all right, how does this tie into your business growth? Does it, right? Is this worth time? Where could I better use that time? Right? Yeah. And so those kind of challenging things, to have that ability to chat with, kind of an advisor, is amazing to me. And I think that's one of the underutilized aspects of ChatGPT or any of the models.
Yeah. And there are so many, if you've used ChatGPT and you don't like it, try Claude, try Mistral's LeChat, try Hugging Face, try Grok, right? Try Gemini. There are so many out there now, so many different ways of looking at it. They're all a little bit different. Claude tends to be better for writing.
Yep.
In my experience, both Claude and GPT are pretty good at thinking. So those tend to be my two. I've played less around with Grok, but Grok, like you said, is a little bit more sarcastic.
Yeah.
And there are uses
fun
for
sometimes. That's why I said sometimes you just got to play with them and see where you kind of vibe for that use case.
That's exactly right.
I advise everybody to use Open Router, so you can connect all kinds of models, and you're not worried about paying for subscriptions for everything all over the map. It's a lot easier. Anyway, last question, Rob. Magic wand time. If I give you a magic wand and you could remove one obstacle so you could grow faster, what would that be?
I'd have to say, this is probably a very common thing you hear, is client acquisition, right? Mm-hmm. So, and there are a lot of people out there that are using AI to book appointments, sales calls, that kind of a thing. I think my magic wand, I'm waving it for the next step. So, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners are getting pitched by these guys who say, I can get you 30 sales calls a month or 10 sales calls a month, qualified sales. Like the problem with that is I don't want to be on the phone for 10 hours, but the person who figures out how to use AI to close the clients and then bring that along and say, hey, I've got a customer who's ready to rock and roll with you. That's where the magic will be. And I don't think we're too far away from that one yet either.
Right. We're working on it. I got it to the point where we have AI SDR, so it could do a lot of, and again, if you have a team, if you're listening to this and you have a team of 10 SDRs, It's not to get rid of all your 10 SDRs, but it will cut those down. It'll make one SDR look like 5. So you could cut 10 down to 2, right? Because it can do the AI can do the work of 2 to 5x on, because a lot of it is plugging the leaky bucket. That's the way. SDR, if they're on the phone, they can't answer that new lead that's coming in, right? So AI can fill that and then hand it off the good conversations that you really want to take to the sales team. And we're just walking up the chain with the AI one by one. But well, you're right. It's especially for digital products and memberships. I think those will happen well before relationship-based like enterprise sales, right? That's a long way away, I still think. But I do think that the self-closing absolutely will happen. I'll take that back to our team, because to me, that's where we want to get to. And because you're right. If you can spend your time working on your value and your business growth is managed, but it doesn't take your whole day of being on calls and because a lot of it is just answering frequently asked questions, right?
That's right.
And that AI can do that very well. Yeah. So like I said, anybody listening to this, that's kind of what we do. We have a platform. I don't get into it on this, but we will happily send you a demo of that in email or in DM. So like I said, DM us. Rob is spot on. That's exactly what we're trying to solve on the growth side. And to me, you marry what Rob's team does with what we're building, it's unbelievable. But for all of you founders and CEOs out there that really want to have good copy, please reach out to Rob's team. And Rob, we'll put all the links, but tell them how to get in touch with you guys.
So if you're interested in learning more about the Copywriter Club, go to thecopywriterclub.com. There are forms, pop-ups or at the bottom of the page, whatever, you can get on my email list. I do email almost daily. It is daily, but because of some of the segments, sometimes people won't get, something that I send out. And if you just want to chat with me about, marketing or copywriters, hiring a copywriter or working with me, you can go to bit.ly/Rob Marsh Copy. And there's a link there where, we can set up an appointment to talk, and I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Love that. And and Rob, you and I are going to be talking about tapping into that, some of that as well, because I'm excited. Like, to me, I think you leverage expertise in the best and highest way. And I love what your whole community does.
Yeah. If I can help people connect with copywriters that can serve their business, and help copywriters connect with clients that, provide meaningful work and foster those relationships. You mentioned, the AIs replace everything except for the relationship, right? The relationship still matters. And if I can help create that for people, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah.
Anything I can do to help.
And you think about it, right? And I'll just wrap up with this. It's all about using great copy, right? And great engagement to just create meaningful conversations. If you talk to any CRO or head of sales, that's what they want. Get my sales team on great conversations and have them pre-educated coming into the call. My close rate's going to go up, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. So I love it. Yeah. To me, this was one of the best business growth. Anybody watching this combination that we're talking about here is how you grow almost any business now. And you have to use AI if you want to compete. There's just no two ways around it in both areas that we're talking about. So Rob, thank you for spending the time with us. I am so excited that we had you on, and I can't wait to get this thing live.
Thanks, Brent. It was a pleasure.
All right. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Future Proof Podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode. But until then, change the plan, but never the goal.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.